Pray do not mock me. I am a very foolish, fond old man, 80 and upward, not an hour more or less. And, to deal plainly, I fear I am not in my perfect mind. Methinks... Then he lost it. One stop north of Astor Place went completely dry. Yet remembering even that much while begging in the subway on the way to Link's funeral after the soft porn drama with the Cowans' Rosa was a huge mnemonic surprise. Methinks what? Methinking methoughts shouldn't be hard. The mind is the perpetual motion machine. You're not ever free of anything. Your mind's in the hands of everything. The personal's an immensity, nuncle, a constellation of detritus that doth dwarf the Milky Way. It pilots thee, as do the stars, the blind Cupid's arrow o'er wild geese that o'erwing the drinker's goosed asshole, as atop thy cancerous Croatian, their coarse Canadian honk thou libidinously mimics, inscribing upon her malignancy with white ink thy squandered chromosomal mark. Back up, back way, way up. Nicky says, "Sir, do you know me?" Lear says, "You are a spirit, I know." Where did you die? Cordelia says, blah, blah. The doctor says, blah, blah. I say, where have I been? Where am I? Fair daylight. I am mightily abused, blah, blah, blah. Nicky, oh, look upon me, sir, and hold your hand in benediction o'er me. No, sir, you must not kneel. And Lear says, it was a Tuesday in December 1944. I came home from school and saw some cars. I saw my father's truck. Why is that there? I knew something was wrong. In the house I saw my father in terrible pain, My mother hysterical, her hands, her fingers, moaning, screaming, people there already. A man had come to the door. "I'm sorry," he said, and gave her the telegram. Missing in action. Another month before the second telegram arrived, a tentative, chaotic time, hope, fear, searching for any story we could get. The phone ringing, never knowing, stories reaching us that he had been picked up by friendly Filipino guerrillas. Someone in his squadron said he passed him in the flight. He was going on the last run. The flak got very bad and Morty's plane went down, but in friendly territory. And Lear replies, "You do me wrong to take me out of the grave." But Sabbath is remembering the second telegram. The month before was terrible, but not as terrible as this. The death notice was like losing another brother. Devastating. My mother in bed. Thought she was dying. Afraid she was going to die too. Smelling salts. The doctor. The house filling up with people. It's hard to be clear about who was there. It's a blur. Everybody was there. But life was over. The family was finished. I was finished. I gave her smelling salts and they spilled, and I was afraid I killed her. The tragic period of my life, between 14 and 16. Nothing to compare with that. It didn't just break her, it broke us all. My father, for the rest of his life, completely changed. He was a reassuring force to me, because of his physique and because he was so dependable. My mother was always the more emotional one, the sadder one, the happier one, always whistling. But there was an impressive sobriety in my father. To see him fall apart. Look at my emotions now. I'm 15 remembering this stuff. Emotions, when they're revved up, don't change. They're the same, fresh and raw. Everything passes, nothing passes. The same emotions are here. He was my father, a hard-working guy, out in the truck to the farmers at 3 a.m. When he came home at night, he was tired and we had to be quiet because he had to get up so early. And if he was ever angry, and that was rare, but if he was ever angry, he was angry in Yiddish. It was terrifying because I couldn't even be sure what he was angry about. But after, he was never angry again. If only he had been. After he became meek, passive, crying all the time, crying everywhere, in the truck, with the customers, with the Gentile farmers. This fucking thing broke my father. After the Shiva, he went back to work again. After the year of official mourning, he stopped crying. But there was always that personal, private misery that you could see a mile away. And I didn't feel so terrific myself. Felt I lost part of my body. Not my prick, no. Can't say a leg, an arm. but a feeling that was psychological and yet an interior loss, a hollowing out, as though I'd been worked on with a chisel, like the horseshoe crab shells lying along the beach, the armature intact and the inside empty, all of it gone, hollowed out, reamed out, chiseled away. I was so oppressive, and my mother going to bed. I was sure I was going to lose my mother. How will she survive? How will any of us survive? There was such an emptiness everywhere. But I had to be the strong one, even before I had to be the strong one. Very tough when he went overseas and all we knew was his APO number. The anxiety, excruciating, worried all the time. I used to help my father with the deliveries the way Morty did. Morty did things that nobody in his right mind would have done. Clambering around up on the roof, fixing something, on his back, shimmying all the way into the dark crud under the porch, wiring something. Every week he washed the floors for my mother. So now I washed the floors. I did a lot of things to try to calm her down after he shipped out to the Pacific. Every week we used to go to the movies. They wouldn't go near a war movie. But even during an ordinary movie, when something suddenly cropped up about the war, or somebody just said something, or somebody overseas, my mother would get upset, and I would have to calm her down. "Ma, it's just a movie. Ma, let's not think about it." She would cry terribly, and I'd leave with her and walk her around. We used to get letters through the APO. He'd do little cartoons on the envelopes sometimes. I'd looked forward to the cartoons, but the only one they cheered up was me. And once he flew over the house. He was stationed in North Carolina, and he had to make a flight to Boston. He told us, "I'm going to fly over the house in a B-25. All the women were outside in the street, in their aprons. In the middle of the day, my father came home in the truck. My friend Ron was there, and Morty did it, flew over and dipped his wings, those flat gull wings. Ron and I were waving. What a hero he was to me. He was incredibly gentle with me. 5 years younger, and he was so gentle. He had a real physique, a shot putter, a track star. He could heave a football almost the whole length of the field. He had a tremendous capacity to toss a ball or to put the shot, to throw things. That was his skill, to throw them far. I would think of that after he was missing. In school, I would be thinking that throwing things far might help him to survive in the jungle. Shot down on the 12th of December and died of wounds on the 15th, which was another misery. They had him in a hospital. The rest of the crew was killed instantly, but the plane was shot down over guerrilla territory, and the guerrillas got him out and to a hospital, and he lived for 3 days. That made it even worse. The crew was killed immediately, and my brother lived 3 more days. I was in a stupor. Ron came. Usually he as good as lived at our house. He said, "Come on out." I said, "I can't." He said, "What happened?" I couldn't talk. It took a few days before I could tell him. I couldn't tell people at school. I couldn't do it, couldn't say it. There was a gym teacher, a big, strong guy who had wanted Morty to give up track and train as a gymnast. "How's your brother?" he would ask me. "Fine," I'd say. I couldn't say it. Other teachers, his shop teacher, who always gave him A's, "How's your brother doing?" "Fine." And then they finally knew. But I never told them. "Hey, how's Morty doing?" And I perpetuated the lie. This went on and on with the people who hadn't heard. I was in my stupor for a year at least. I even got scared for a while of girls having lipstick and having tits. Every challenge was suddenly too great. My mother gave me his watch. Nearly killed me, but I wore it. I took it to sea. I took it to the army. Took it to Rome, and here it is, his G.I. Benrus. Wind it daily. All that's changed is the strap. Stop function on the second hand, still working. When I was on the track team, I used to think about his ghost. That was the first ghost. I was like my father and him, always strong up top. Besides, Morty threw the shot, so I had to. I imbued myself with him. I used to look up at the sky before I threw it and think that he was looking over me. And I called for strength. I was at a state meet. I was in 5th place. I knew the unreality of it, but I just kept praying to him, and I threw it farther than I ever did before. I didn't win, but I had got his strength. I could use it now. Where is it? Here's the watch, but where's the strength? In the seat to the right of where Sabbath had gone blank on methinks was what had caused him to go blank. No more than 21 or 2, sculpted entirely in black. Turtleneck sweater, pleated skirt, tights, shoes, even a black velvet headband keeping her shining black hair back from her forehead. She had been gazing up at him. It was the gaze that had stopped him, its meek, familiar softness. She sat with one arm resting on the black nylon backpack by her side, silently watching as he worked to recall the last scene of Act 4. Lear is carried sleeping into the French camp. Aye, madam, in the heaviness of sleep we put fresh garments on him, and there to wake him is Cordelia. How does my royal lord? How fares your majesty? And it is then Lear replies, You do me wrong to take me out of the grave. The girl with the gaze was speaking, but so softly at first that he couldn't hear her. She was younger than he'd thought, probably a student, probably no more than 19. Yes, speak up. What he was always telling Nicky whenever she said something she was afraid to say, which was half the time she spoke. She had driven him crazier with each passing year, saying things so that he couldn't hear them. What did you say? It doesn't matter. Drove him nuts. Methinks, she said, quite audibly now, I should know you and know this man. She'd given him the line. A drama student on her way up to Juilliard. He repeated, Methinks I should know you and know this man, and then, on his own momentum, proceeded, Yet I am doubtful, for I am mainly ignorant what place this is, and all the skill I have. Here he pretended not to know what was next. And all the skill I have, feebly twice he repeated this and looked to her for assistance. Remembers not these garments, prompted the girl, nor I know not. She stopped when, with a smile, he indicated that he believed he could himself once again pick up from there. She smiled back. Nor I know not where I did lodge last night. Do not laugh at me, for as I am a man, I think this lady is Nicky's daughter. Not impossible? Nicky's beautifully imploring eyes? Nicky's perplexing, perpetually uncertain voice? No, she was not merely some tender-hearted, over-impressionable kid who would excitedly tell her family tonight that a white-bearded old bum had been reciting to her from Lear on the Lexington IRT, and that she had dared to help him remember the lines. She was Nicky's daughter. The family she was going home to tonight was Nicky. Nicky was alive. Nicky was in New York. This girl was hers. And if hers, somehow his, whoever the father might be. Sabbath was hovering directly above her now, his emotions an avalanche rolling across him, sweeping him beneath them, and uprooting the little rootedness still holding him to himself. What if they were all alive and at Nicky's house? Morty, Mom, Dad, Drenka? Abolishing death, a thrilling thought. For all that, he wasn't the first person on or off a subway to have it desperately, to renounce reason, and have it the way he did when he was 15 years old and they had to have Morty back. Turning life back like a clock in the fall, just taking it down off the wall and winding it back until you're dead all appear like standard time. For as I am a man, he said to the girl, I think this lady to be my child Cordelia. And so I am. Undesigning Cordelia's unguarded response, the poignantly simple iambic trimeter that Nicky had uttered in a voice 1/10 a lost orphan's and the rest a weary, teetering woman's, spoken by the girl whose gaze was Nicky's exactly. Who is your mother? Sabbath whispered to her. Tell me who your mother is. The words made her go pale. Her eyes, like Nicky's, which could hide nothing, were like those of a child who'd just been told something terrible. All her horror of him came right to the surface, as it would sooner or later in Nicky, too. To have been moved by this mad monstrosity because he could quote Shakespeare. To have become entangled on the subway with someone unmistakably crazy, capable of anything. How could she be so idiotic? Simple as it was to read her thoughts, Sabbath declaimed no less brokenly than Lear, "You are the daughter of Nicky Kantarakis." Frantically pulling open the straps of her knapsack, the girl tried to locate her purse and find money to give him, money to make him go away. But Sabbath had to see once more the fact that was indisputable, that Nicky lived. And turning her face with his crippled hand, feeling Nicky's living skin, he said, "Where is your mother hiding from me?" "Don't!" she screamed. "Don't touch me!" And was swatting at his arthritic fingers as though a swarm of flies had attacked her when somebody came up from behind and with jarring force hooked Sabbath under the arms. A business suit was all he could see of his powerful captor. "Calm down," he was being told. "Calm down. You shouldn't drink that stuff." "What should I drink? I'm 64 years old and I've never been sick a day in my life, except my tonsils as a child. I drink what I want." "Calm down, Mac. Cut it out. Calm down and get yourself to a shelter." "I caught lice in the shelter," Sabbath boomed back. "Do not abuse me." "You abuse her. You're the abuser, Chief." The train had reached Grand Central. People rushed for the open doors. The girl was gone. Sabbath was freed. "Pray you now," shouted Sabbath as he wandered off the train alone, looking in all directions for Nicky's daughter. "Pray you now," he exclaimed to those standing back from him as he strode majestically along the platform, shaking his cup out before him. "Pray you now." And then, without even Nicky's daughter to prompt him, he remembered what is next. Words that could have meant nothing at all to him in the theater of the Bowery Basement Players in 1961. "Pray you now forget and forgive. I am old and foolish." This was true. It was hard for him to believe that he was simulating any longer, though not impossible. "Thou'lt come no more. Never, 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 never." Destroy the clock. Join the crowd. It was Michelle Cowan, Norman's wife, who'd got the 50 tablets of Voltaren sent over from a pharmacy on Broadway and written him a prescription for 4 refills. So he was in great form over dinner that evening because he knew that he'd soon be getting some relief from the pain in his hands, and also because Michelle was nothing like so gaunt as she'd looked in the Polaroid pictures hidden beneath her lingerie along with that envelope of $100 bills. She was a nicely fleshed-out woman, very much in the mold of Drinka, and she laughed so easily, so quick to be amused and entertained by him. And she'd done nothing at all to indicate distress after he'd stealthily hunted down beneath the table her unshod foot and lightly laid upon it the sole of his slipper. The slippers were on loan from Norman. Norman had also sent his secretary out to an Army-Navy store to buy Sabbath a change of clothes. 2 pairs of khakis, a couple of work shirts, some socks, undershirts, and briefs were all in a big paper bag on Debbie's bed when they got home from the funeral. Even handkerchiefs. He looked forward to organizing his new things in among Debbie's later that night. Michelle's hidden Polaroids had to be at least 5 years old, mementos of an old affair, ready for a new one. She looked ripish, all right, though maybe because she'd let herself go, gotten heavier, figuring it was over with men, probably about Drinka's age, but living with a husband who, of course, in no way resembled Drinka's Matya, though sooner or later all husbands resemble Drinka's Matya, do they not? The previous night, Norm had described the antidepressant he was taking as not a dick-friendly drug. So here, there was nobody fucking her. That much was clear. Not that Sabbath was about to take up the slack if she was getting $1,000 a shot. Though maybe it wasn't men who gave her the money, but Michelle who gave money to men, young men. In her laugh was the low-down trace of a coarse rumble that made him want to believe that. Or maybe the cash was for the day she packed up and left. The plan to leave, who didn't have one? It evolves as tortuously as the wills of propertied people, rewrites and revisions every 6 months. I'll go stay with this one. No, I'll go stay with that one. This hotel, this woman, that woman. 2 different women with no women. No woman ever again. I'll open a secret account, hock the ring, sell the bonds, then get to be 60, 65, 70. What difference does it make anymore? They're going to leave, all right, but this time they're really going to leave. For some people, this is the best thing to be said for death, finally getting out of the marriage, and without having to wind up in a hotel, without having to live through those miserable Sundays alone in a hotel. It's the Sundays that keep these couples together, as if Sundays alone could be any worse. No, this is not a good marriage. You wouldn't be far off guessing that much, no matter whose table you happen to be sitting at. But Sabbath could tell from that laugh, if not from the fact that he was being permitted to play footsie with her only 10 minutes into the meal, that something had turned out wrong. In her laugh was the recognition that she was no longer in charge of the forces at work. In her laugh was the admission of her captivity to Norman, to menopause, to work, to aging, to everything that could only deteriorate further. Nothing unforeseen that happens is likely ever again to be going to be good. What is more, death is over in its corner, doing deep knee bends, and one day soon will leap across the ring at her as mercilessly as it leaped upon Drenka. Because even though she's at her heaviest ever, weighing in about 135, 140, death is 2-ton Tony Galento and Man Mountain Dean. The laugh said that everything had shifted on her while her back was turned, while she was facing the other way, the right way, her arms open wide to the dynamic admixture of demands and delights that had been the daily bread of her 30s and 40s, to all that assiduous activity, all the extravagant, holiday-like living, so inexhaustibly busy, with the result that no more time than it took for the Cowans to cross the ocean on the Concorde for a long weekend in Paris. She was 55 and seared with hot flashes, and her daughter's now was the female form exuding the magnetic currents. The laugh said that she was sick of staying, sick of plodding leaving, sick of unsatisfied dreams, sick of satisfied dreams, sick of adapting, sick of not adapting, sick of just about everything except existing. Exulting in existing while being sick of everything. That's what was in that laugh. A semi-defeated, semi-amused, semi-aggrieved, semi-amazed, semi-negative, hilarious, big laugh. He liked her enormously, probably just as insufferable a mate as he was. He could discern in her, whenever her husband spoke, the desire to be just a little cruel to Norman, saw her sneering at the best of him, at the very best things in him. If you don't go crazy because of your husband's vices, you go crazy because of his virtues. He's on Prozac because he can't win. Everything is leaving her except for her behind, which her wardrobe informs her is broadening by the season. And except for this steadfast prince of a man marked by reasonableness and ethical obligation the way others are scarred by insanity or illness. Sabbath understood her state of mind, her state of life, her state of suffering. Dusk is descending, and sex, our greatest luxury, is racing away at tremendous speed. Everything is racing off at tremendous speed, and you wonder at your folly in having ever turned down a single squalid fuck. You'd give your right arm for one if you were a babe like this. It's not unlike the Great Depression, not unlike going broke overnight after years of raking it in. Nothing unforeseen that happens, the hot flashes inform her, is likely ever again to be going to be good. Hot flashes mockingly mimicking the sexual ecstasies. Dipped she is in the very fire of fleeting time, aging 17 days for every 17 seconds in the furnace. He clocked her on Morty's Benrus. 17 seconds of menopause oozing out all over her face. You could baste her in it. And then it just stops, like a tap that's been shut. But while she is in it, he can see how it seems to her that there's no bottom to it, that this time they're out to cook her like Joan of Arc. Nothing quite touches Sabbath like these aging dishes with the promiscuous pasts and the pretty young daughters, especially when they've still got it in them to laugh like this one. You see all they once were in that laugh. I am what's left of the famous motel fucking. Hang a medal on my drooping boobs. It's no fun burning on a pyre at dinner. And death, he reminded her by evenly pressing down on her naked instep with the ball of his foot, On top of us, over us, ruling us, death. You should have seen Link. You should have seen him all quieted down like a good little boy with green skin and white hair. Why was he green? He wasn't green when I knew him. It's frightening, Norman said after quickly identifying the corpse. They walked out into the street and over to a coffee shop for a Coke. It's spooky, said Norman with a shudder. Yet Sabbath enjoyed it. Exactly what he'd driven all this way to see. Learned a lot, Michelle. You lie there like a good little boy who does what he is told. And if pressing Michelle Cowan's foot beneath his own wasn't sufficient reason to live, there were his new khaki trousers and his new jockey briefs, a big bag full of clothes such as he had not thought to buy for himself in years. Even handkerchiefs, long time between handkerchiefs. All the tattered shit he wore, the T-shirts yellowing under the arms, the boxer shorts with elasticity shot, the unmatched remnants that were his socks, the big tipped boots he sported like Mammy Yoakum 12 months a year. Were the boots what they called a statement? This fucking way they talked made him feel like a curmudgeon. Diogenes in his tub making a statement? He'd noticed that the college girls down in the valley were all now wearing clodhoppers not unlike his own, kind of lace-up construction boots, along with lacy maiden aunt dresses, feminine in the dress, but not conventionally feminine, because there's something else there in the shoes. The shoes say, I'm tough, don't mess with me, while the lacy, long, old-fashioned dress says, so that altogether we've got ourselves a statement like, if you would be kind enough, sir, to try to fuck me, I'll kick your fucking head in. Even Debbie, with her low self-esteem, gets burnished up like Cleopatra. Haute couture has been passing me by along with everything else. Wait till I hit the streets in my khakis. Manhattan let me in. He was sublimely effervescent about not being the good little boy in the box doing what he was told. Also over not having been turned in by Rosa. She'd said nothing to anyone about their mourning. The mercy that there is in life, and none of it deserved. All our crimes against each other, and still we get another shot at it in a new pair of pants. Outside the funeral home after the service, Link's 8-year-old grandson Joshua had said to his mother, whose hand was in Norman's, "Who were the people talking about?" "Grandpa, Link was his name. You know that. Lincoln." "But that wasn't Grandpa," the boy said. "That wasn't what he was like." "Wasn't it?" "No. Grandpa was like a baby." "But not always, Josh. When he got sick, he became like a baby. But before, he was just as all his friends described him." "That wasn't Grandpa," he replied determinedly, shaking his head. "Sorry, Mom." Link's littlest grandchild named Lori, a tiny, energetic girl with large, dark, sensual eyes, who raced up to Sabbath on the pavement after the service and said, "Santa, Santa, I'm 3. They put Grandpa in a box." That box never failed to impress. Whatever your age, the sight of that box never lost its power. One of us takes up no more room than that. You can store us like shoes or ship us like lettuce. The simpleton who invented the coffin was a poetic genius and a great wit. "What would you like for Christmas?" Sabbath asked the child, kneeling to satisfy her desire to touch his beard. "Hanukkah!" Lori shouted with great excitement. "It's yours," he told her, and restrained the impulse to touch with a crooked finger her clever little mouth and thereby wind up where he began. Where he began. That indeed was the subject. The obscene performance with which he'd begun. It was Norman who'd started it off, describing for Michelle the skit that had got Sabbath arrested out in front of the gates of Columbia back in 1956. That skit in which the middle finger of his left hand would beckon a pretty young student right up to the screen and then enter into conversation with her while the 5 fingers of the other hand began deftly to unbutton her coat. "Describe it, Mick. Tell Shell how you got arrested." Mick and Shell, Shell and Mick, a duo if ever there was one. And Norman seemed to recognize that already, to understand, after less than half an hour at the dinner table, that in Sabbath's down-and-outness there might be more to stir his wife than in all his own orderly success. There was in the aging Sabbath's failure a threat of disarray, not unlike the danger there used to be to Norman in young Sabbath's eruptive, disruptive vitality. My misbehaving always imperiled him. You should know what it's done to me. This mighty fortress, built to withstand the remotest intimation of mayhem, and yet here, near the end, as at the beginning, he continues to be humbled by the stinky little mess I make of things. I frighten him. As my father said, balbatish, this generous, lovely, balbatish success continues to kowtow to a putz. You'd think I'd burst forth in a boiling blaze, incandescent from pandemonium, instead of having driven down 684 in an ancient Chevy with a busted tailpipe. How I got arrested, Sabbath said. 4 decades, Norm. Almost 40 years. I don't know that I remember anymore how I got arrested. He did, of course. He had never forgotten any of it. You remember the girl. The girl, he repeated. Helen Trumbull, Norman said. That was her name, Trumbull? And the judge? Mulcrone. Yes, him, I remember. Gave a great performance, Mulcrone. The cop was Abramowitz, right? Officer Abramowitz, yes. Yes, the cop was a Jew, and the prosecutor another Irishman, that kid with the crew cut. Just out of St. John's, said Norman. Foster. Yes, very disagreeable. Foster didn't like me. Outraged, genuinely outraged. How can anyone do this? Yes, guy from St. John's, that's right. Crew cut, rep tie. His father's a cop. He never thinks he'll earn more than $10,000 a year, and he wants to send me up for life. Tell Shelley. Why? What's he up to? Showing me in my best light or in my worst? Turning her on to me or turning her off? It had to be off, because before dinner, alone in the living room with Sabbath, he had lavished on his wife and her work an uxorious deluge of admiration, what Rosanna had been dying for, thirsting for all her married life. While Michelle was showering and changing for dinner, Norman had shown him, in a recent alumni magazine from the University of Pennsylvania Dental School, a photograph of Michelle and her father, an old man in a wheelchair, one of several pictures illustrating a story about parents and children who were Penn Dental School graduates. Before his stroke and well into his 70s, Michelle's father had been a dentist in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. According to Norman, an overbearing bastard whose own father had been a dentist and who pronounced at Michelle's birth, "I don't give a shit that she's a girl, this is a dental family and she's going to be a dentist." As it turned out, she had not merely gone to his dental school, but had outdone the hard-driving son of a bitch by taking 2 more years to become a periodontist and ending up at the top of her class. "I can't tell you," said Norman, nursing the evening glass of wine he said he was allowed while on Prozac, "what a physical trial being a periodontist is. Most days she gets home just like tonight, beat. Imagine going with an instrument and trying to clean the back outer corner of a second or third molar and trying to get up into that pocket there, up in the gum. Who can see? Who can reach? She's physically amazing. Over 20 years of this, I've said to her, why don't you think of cutting the practice back to 3 days a week? With periodontal disease, you see your patients year after year, forever. Her patients will wait for her. But no, she's out every morning at 7:30 and isn't home until 7:30. And some weeks, she's even in there on Saturdays. Yes, Saturday, Sabbath was thinking, must be a big day for Shelley. While Norman was explaining, if you're meticulous in the way that Michelle is, and you've got to do a cleaning around every surface of every tooth in unreachable places. Granted, she's got instruments with curves that help. She's got these instruments she cleans these roots with called scalers and curettes, because she's not just dealing with the crown portion like a hygienist. She's got to do this to the root surfaces if there are pockets, if there is bone loss. How he praises her, how much he cares. How much he knows and doesn't. Before dinner, Sabbath had been wondering whether the encomium was designed to keep him at bay or whether it was the drug speaking. Maybe I was listening to Prozac. Or maybe I'm merely listening to his wife's elaborate excuses for working late at the office. To somebody's lamely repeating, as if he believed it, something somebody else told them to believe about them. Because up there, Norman continued, is where the action is. It's not just to shine the enamel and make the teeth pretty. It's to pick the tartar, which can be very adherent. I've seen her come home limp after a day of this stuff. To snap the tartar off the roots. Sure, there are ultrasonic instruments that help, but they use an ultrasonic device, runs on an electrical current, emits ultrasonic energy, goes up into the pocket there to help crack off all the crap. But so it doesn't overheat, there's of course a water spray. It's like living in a fog with that water spray. Living in the mist, it's like spending 20 years in the rainforest. So she was an Amazon, was that it? Daughter of once terrifying tribal chief whom she had conquered and gone beyond. An Amazon warrior, emitting ultrasonic energy, armed against barnacled tartar with stainless steel scalers and curving curettes. What was Sabbath to conclude? That she was too much for Norman? That he was as perplexed by her as he was proud of her and overpowered? That now that the youngest child was off at college, and it was just him and the dental dynasty heiress alone together side by side, Sabbath didn't know what to think in the living room before dinner, any more than he did at the table, with Norman urging him to tell the story of the defiant outsider that he'd been in his 20s. So unlike Norman himself starting out, the well-groomed, well-mannered, Columbia-educated son of the jukebox distributor whose croaking voice and crude success had shamed Norman throughout his youth. The son and the daughter of two brutes. Only I had the gently loving father, and look how it all turned out. Well, so there I am, 1956, on 116th and Broadway, just by the university gates there, 27 years old. The cop has been standing around for days watching. There are usually about 25 students, some passers-by, but mostly students. Afterward, I passed the hat. The whole thing takes less than 30 minutes. I think I got a breast out once before. To get a kid to go that far with me, rare in those days. I didn't expect it. The idea of the act was that I couldn't get that far. But this time, it happened. The tit is out. It's out. And the cop comes up and he says, "Hey, you can't do that." He's calling this down to me, back of the screen. "It's all right, officer," I tell him. "It's part of the show." I stayed down and the middle finger said to him, the one that had been talking to the girl. I figured, great, now I've got a cop in the show. The kids watching aren't sure he isn't part of the show. They start laughing. "You can't do that," he tells me. "There are children here. They can see the breast." "There aren't any children here," the finger says. "Get up," he tells me. "Stand up. You can't expose that breast on the street. You can't have a breast exposed in the middle of Manhattan at 12:15 at 116th Street and Broadway. And also, you're taking advantage of this young woman. Do you want him to do this to you?" The cop asks her. "Is there a sexual molestation charge here?" "No," she says. "I permitted him to do it." "The girl's a student," Michelle said. "Yep, Barnard student." "Brave," said Michelle. "I permitted him to do it. What'd the policeman do?" He says, "Permitted? You were hypnotized. This guy hypnotized you. You didn't know he was doing it to you." "No," she says to him defiantly. "It was okay." She was frightened when the cop came, but there she was with all the other students. The students are generally anti-cop, so she just picked up the mood and she went with it. She said, "It's all right, officer. Leave him alone. He wasn't doing anything wrong." "Sound like Debbie?" Michelle said to Norman. Sabbath waited to see how the Prozac would feel that one. "Let him go on," Norman said. So the cop says to the girl, "I can't leave him alone. There could be kids here. What would people say if the police just allowed blouses to be open and breasts to be out on the street and someone publicly twisting a nipple? You want me to let him do it in Central Park?" "Have you done it?" he asked me. "In Central Park?" "Well," I said, "I have my show in Central Park." No, he says to me. "You can't do this. People are complaining. The guy who owns the drugstore over there is complaining. Get these people away from here. It's not good for his business." I told him I wasn't aware of that. If anything, I felt the drugstore hurt my business. This got a rise from the kids, and now he's getting pissed off. "Listen, this young woman didn't want her breast out, and she wasn't even aware of it until I pointed out to her. She was hypnotized by you." "I was aware of it," the girl says, and all the kids applaud her. They're really impressed by her. Listen, officer, I said, what I did was okay. She agreed to do it. It was just fun. It was not fun. It's not my idea of fun. It's not that druggist over there idea of fun. You can't use that kind of behavior here. Okay, I said. Now, what are you going to do about it? I can't stand around talking all day. I got a living to make. The kids love this too. But the cop remains decent, given the circumstances. All he says is, I want you to tell me you're not going to do it again. But it's my act. It's my art. Oh, don't give me that shit about your art. What does playing with a nipple have to do with art? It's a new art form, I tell him. Oh, bullshit. You bums are always telling me about your art. I'm not a bum. This is what I do for my livelihood, officer. Well, you're not doing this livelihood in New York. You have a license? No. Why don't you have a license? You can't get a license for it. I'm not selling potatoes. There is no license for a puppeteer. I don't see puppets. I carry my puppet between my legs, I said. What shit, Shorty? I don't see puppets. I just see fingers. And there is a license for a puppeteer. There's a street license for acting. I can't get that. Of course you can get it, he tells me. I can't. And I can't go down there and wait 4 or 5 hours to find out I can't. Okay, says the cop. So you're vending without a license. There's no vending license, I tell him, for touching women's breasts on the street. So you admit that's what you do. Oh, shit, I say. This is ridiculous. And the whole thing starts to get belligerent, and he tells me he's going to take me in. And the girl, Michelle again. The girl's good. The girl says, hey, leave him alone. And the cop says, you're trying to interfere with this arrest? Leave him alone, she tells him. This is Debbie. Michelle laughed. Absolutely, Deborah. Is it? Sabbath asked. To a T. She's proud. The cop grabs me because I'm starting to be a real pain in the ass. I say, hey, I'm not going in. This is silly. And he says, you are. And the girl says, leave him alone. And he says, listen, if you keep doing this, I'll take you in also. This is crazy, the girl says. I just came from my physics class. I didn't do anything. Things get out of control, and the cop pushes her out of the way. And so I start shouting, hey, don't push her. Oh, he says to me, Sir Galahad. In 1956, a cop could still say something like that. This was before the decline of the West spread from the colleges to the police departments. Anyway, he takes me in. He lets me get all my apparatus together, and he takes me in. With the girl? Michelle said. Nope, just took me. I want the book, this guy, he tells the booking officer. The precinct station on 96th Street. I got scared, of course. When you walk into a station, there's a big desk up front with a booking officer, and this big desk scares you. I said, this is absolutely bullshit. But when Abramowitz says, this guy should be booked for vending without a license, disorderly conduct, harassment, assault, and obscenity, and resisting arrest, and obstruction of justice. When I heard this, I think I'm going to serve the rest of my life. And I went nuts. This is bullshit. I'll get the ACLU. This'll be the end of you, I tell the cop. I'm shitting my pants, but that's what I'm shouting. Yeah, the ACLU. Abramowitz says, those red bastards, great. I'm not going to say anything until I get a lawyer from the ACLU. Now the cop is shouting, fuck them, fuck you. We don't need a lawyer. We're just going to arrest you now, Shorty. You bring a lawyer here when you got to be in court. The desk sergeant is listening to all this. He says to me, tell me what happened, young man. I don't know from shit what it means, but I just say it again and again. I'm not going to tell you till I get a lawyer. And Abramowitz is now deep in the fuck you mode. But the other guy says, what happened, son? I think, tell him. He's not a bad guy. So I said, listen, this is all that happened. And he went crazy. He went crazy because he saw a breast. It happens all the time. Kids are making out on the street. This guy lives in Queens. He doesn't know what's happening. Does he ever see the way girls walk around here in the summer? Everybody on the street knows except this guy who lives in Queens. An exposed breast is no big deal. So Abramowitz says, it's not just an exposed breast. You don't know her. You never met her. You unnippled it. You unbuttoned it. She really didn't know what was going on. You were distracting her with the finger and you hurt her. I didn't hurt her. You hurt her. You pushed her. The desk sergeant says, You mean to say you totally undressed a woman on Broadway? No, all I did was this, and I explained again. The guy was fascinated. How could you on an open street with a woman you never met before? My art, Sergeant, that's my art. This breaks him up, said Sabbath, seeing it breaking Michelle up too. And Norman, so happy, watching from a foot away while I seduce his wife. This Prozac is some drug. Harry, the desk sergeant says to Abramowitz, why don't you leave the kid alone? He's not a bad kid. All he did was his art. He's still laughing. Finger painting, baby shit, what's the difference? He has no record. He's not going to do it again. If the kid had 17 molestation charges. But Abramowitz is furious now. No, that's my street. Everybody knows me there. He was abusive to me. How? He pushed me away. He touched you. He touched a police officer. Yeah, he touched me. So now I'm not up for touching the girl. Now I'm up for touching the cop, which I never did. But of course the desk sergeant, after trying to placate Harry, switches and goes over to Harry's side, to the arresting officer's side. So they charge me with all this stuff. The cop makes out an affidavit as to what happened, and a complaint is issued against me. 7 charges. I can get a year for each. I'm commanded to appear at 60 Center Street. Is that it, Norm? 60 Center? 60 Center Street in Part 22 at 2:30 in the afternoon. You remember everything. So how did you get a lawyer? Michelle asked him. Norman and Link. I got a phone call, either from Norman or Link. Link, said Norman. Poor Link, in that box. Got him, too, and it's only a box. Never seems to become cliched. Link said, we understand you got arrested. We got a lawyer for you. Not a little schmagegi just out of law school, but some guy who's been around for a while. Jerry Gleckel. He's done fraud cases, assault and battery, robbery, burglary. He does organized crime work. It pays very well, but the work is not marvelous. And this he's willing to do as a favor to me. Right, Norm? A favor to Link, whom he somehow knows. Gleckel says this is all bullshit, and in all probability it'll be dismissed. I talked to Gleckel. I'm still hot on the ACLU, so he goes to Civil Liberties Union and tells them that this is a case he thinks they should support. I'll represent him, he says. You should support him. Submit an amicus brief. We'll make it an ACLU-sponsored case. Gleckel's got it all figured out. What it deals with is really artistic freedom on the streets, arbitrary control by the police of the streets. Who controls the streets, the people or the police force? 2 people doing something that's innocuous, that's playful. The defenses are all obvious, just another case of police abuse. Why should a kid like this have to spend X, Y, and Z, etc.? So we came to trial. About 22 people show up at the trial, lost in the big courtroom. The civil rights student group from Columbia, about 12 kids and their advisor, somebody from the Columbia Spectator, somebody from the Columbia radio station. They're not there because of me. They're there because this girl, Helen Trumbull, is saying that I did nothing wrong. In 1956, this creates a tiny stir. Where'd she get the guts? This is still years before Charlotte Mormon is playing the cello bare-breasted down in the village, and this is just a kid, not a performer. There's even somebody sitting there from the Nation. They got wind of it. And there's the judge, Mull Crone, old Irish guy, former prosecutor, tired, very tired. He doesn't want to hear this shit. He doesn't care. There are murderers and killings in the street, and here he is wasting his time with a guy who twisted a nipple. So he's not in the best of moods. The prosecutor is the young boy from St. John's who wants to put me behind bars for life. The trial starts at 2:30, and about an hour before, he has the witnesses down in his office running them through the lies. And then they get on the stand and they do their stuff. 3 of them, as I remember it. Some old lady who says the girl kept pushing my hand away, but I wouldn't stop. And the druggist, the Jewish druggist, humanistically outrageous only a Jewish druggist can be. He could see only the back of the woman, but he testified that she was upset. Gleckel cross-examines him, contending that the druggist couldn't have seen it because the girl had her back to him. 20 minutes of his Jewish druggist lies. And the cop testifies. He's called at the beginning. He testified, and I'm nuts. I'm angry. I'm squirming. I'm furious. Then I got up and testified. The prosecutor asks me, did you ever ask the woman if you could unbutton her shirt? No. No. Did you know who was in the audience at the time? No. Did you know that there were kids in the audience? There were no kids in the audience. Can you state under oath, as a matter of certainty, that there were no kids in the audience? You're down there and they're up here. Didn't you see the 7 kids walking at the back there? And the druggist, you see, will testify that there were 7 kids. And the old lady, too, all of them. You see, they all want to hang me because of the tit. Look, this is a form of art. This gets a rise every time. The kid from St. John's makes a face. Art? What you did was unbutton a woman's breast, and that's art? How many other women's dresses have you unbuttoned? Actually, it rarely has ever happened that I've got that far, unfortunately. But that's the art. The art is being able to get them into the act. The judge, Mulcrone, first thing he says now, flat voice, art, like he's just been wakened from the dead. Art. The prosecutor won't even get into the dialogue. It's so absurd. Art, he says to me. You have any kids? No. You don't care about kids. You have a job? This is my job. You don't have a job. Have a wife? No. Ever had a job that lasted more than 6 months? Merchant seaman, U.S. Army, GI Bill in Italy. So he's got me nailed. He delivers his shot. You call yourself an artist. I call you a drifter. Then my lawyer calls the professor from NYU. Big mistake. This was Gleckel's idea. They had professors to argue the Ulysses case. They had professors to argue the miracle case. Why shouldn't we have a professor to argue your case? I didn't want it. The professors are as full of shit on the stand as the druggist and the cop. Shakespeare was a great street artist. Proust was a great street artist, and so on. He was going to compare me, my act, to Jonathan Swift. The professors are always schlepping in Swift to defend some farschluckeder nobody. Anyway, about 2 seconds, the judge learns he's not a witness, he's an expert witness. To Mulcrone's credit, he is baffled. What's he an expert on? That street art is a valid form of art, my lawyer says, and what they are doing, this interplay on the streets, is traditional. The judge covers his face. It's 3:30 in the afternoon, and the man has heard 112 cases before me. He is 70 years old, and he's been on the bench all day. He says, this is absolute nonsense. I'm not going to listen to a professor. He touched a breast. What happened is he touched a breast. I don't need any testimony from a professor. The professor can go home. Gleckel. No, Your Honor, there is a larger perspective to this case, and the larger perspective is that there is legitimate street art, and what happens in street art is that you can engage people in a way that you can't engage them in a theater. And all the time Gleckel is speaking, the judge is still covering his face. The judge covers his face even when he himself is speaking. The whole of life makes him want to cover his face. He's right, too. He was a wonderful man, Mulcrone. I miss him. He knew the score. But my lawyer goes on. Gleckel goes on. Gleckel is sick of doing organized crime work. He has higher aspirations. I think mostly now he is directing his argument to the reporter from The Nation. It's the intimacy of street art, he says, that makes it unique. Look, Mulcrone says, he touched a breast on the street in order to get some laughs or in order to get some attention. Isn't that right, Sonny? So the prosecutor has 3 witnesses and the cop against me, and we don't have the professor, but we've got the girl. We've got Helen Trumbull. The wild card is this girl. It was unusual that she should come down there. Here's the alleged victim testifying for the perpetrator, though Gleckel is saying this is a victimless crime. In fact, the victim, if there even is one, is coming his way. But the prosecutor says no, the victim is the public, the poor public, getting the shaft from this fucking drifter, this artist. If this guy can walk along the street, he says, and do this, then little kids think it's permissible to do this. If little kids think it's permissible to do this, then they think it's permissible to blah, blah, banks, rape women, use knives. If 7-year-old kids, the 7 non-existent kids are now 7-year-old kids, are going to see that this is fun and permissible with strange women. And what happened with the girl, Michelle asked, when she testified? What do you want to have happened? Sabbath asked her. How did she hold up? She's a middle-class girl, a nervy girl, a terrific, defiant girl. But once she gets in the court, how do you expect she held up? She gets scared. Out on the street, she was a good kid. She had guts. 116th Street and Broadway is a young people's world. But here in the courtroom, the alliance is the cops, the prosecutor, and the judge. It's their world. They believe each other, and you've got to be blind not to see it. So how does she testify? In a scared voice, goes there, meaning to help me. But once she walks into the courtroom, a big room, big walls, justice for all written up there in wood, she gets scared. Debbie, said Michelle. The girl testifies that she didn't scream. The druggist said she screamed, and she says she never screamed. You mean to say a man is touching your breast in the middle of Manhattan, doing this, and you didn't scream out? See, sounds like she's a whore. That's what he wants to establish, that Debbie, says Sabbath, altogether deliberately, but pretending not to have even heard his own error, is a whore. Nobody corrects him. How often do men touch your breasts in the middle of the street? Never. Were you surprised? Were you upset? Were you shocked? Were you this? Were you that? I didn't notice. You didn't notice? The kid is getting nervous as hell, but she hangs in. It was part of the game. Do you generally have men play games with your breasts in the middle of the street? A man you didn't know, a man you'd never spoken to, a man whose face you couldn't see. But he testified I screamed, Debbie says. I never screamed. Helen, Norman said. Trumbull, Sabbath said. Helen Trumbull. You said Debbie. No, I said Helen. It doesn't matter, Michelle said. What happened to her? Well, he really goes to work on her. For old St. John's, for his father the cop, for morality, for America, for Cardinal Spellman, for the Vatican, for Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, and all the gang there in the manger, for the donkeys and the cows there in the manger, for the wise men and the myrrh and the frankincense, for the whole fucking Catholic smear that we all need like a fucking hole in the head. This kid from St. John's really tears into Debbie's ass. He brutalizes her. He kicks her every fucking which way. I twist nipples out on the street, but this guy goes right for the cunt. Remember? Oh, yeah, I remember, Norm. A real clitorectomy. First I ever had the privilege to see. He cut her little fucking weenie right off her. Right there. Right where it says justice for all. And the judge and the cop and the druggist ate it up. Yeah, he really broke her down. Have you ever walked into class with your breast exposed? No. When you were at Bronx Science High School, before you came to Barnard to become a defender of artistic freedom, did anyone at Bronx Science ever touch your breast in full view of the other students? No. But weren't some of those students friends of yours? Isn't it less embarrassing to do it in front of friends than in front of strangers in the street? No, I guess I don't know. Uh-oh, score this round for the gang in the manger. He finally got her thinking that she may be in the wrong. Have you ever exposed your breasts on 115th Street, 114th Street, 113th Street? And what about the little kids who were watching? There were no little kids. Listen, you're standing here. The guy is performing there. This whole thing took a minute and a half. Did you see who was walking behind you during that minute and a half? Yes or no? No. It's noon. Kids are on lunch hour. You have kids from the music school up there. You have kids from private school. Do you have a brother or sister? Yes. Both. How old are they? 12 and 10. Your sister is 10. How would you like your 10-year-old sister to know what you allowed a man you didn't know to do to you in full view of 116th Street and Broadway with dozens of cars passing, hundreds of people walking around? For you to be standing there while this man is twisting your nipple. How do you feel about telling that to your sister? Debbie tries to brazen it out. I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind. What a girl. If I could find her today and she would let me, I'd get down on 116th Street and Broadway and lick the soles off her feet. I wouldn't mind. In 1956. And how about if he did it to your sister? This gets her back up. My sister's only 10, she says. Have you told this to your mother? No. Have you told this to your father? No. No. And so isn't it true then that the reason you're testifying for him is that you feel sorry for him? It's not because you think what he did was right, is it? Is it? Is it, Debbie? Well, by now she's in tears. They did it. They've done it. They've pretty well proved that this girl is a whore. I went nuts because the basic lie in this case is that there were kids there. And what if there even were? I stood up. I screamed, if there are so many kids, why aren't there any kids testifying here? But the prosecutor likes that I scream. Gleckel is trying to get me to sit down, but the prosecutor says to me, and the voice is very holy, he says, I wasn't going to drag kids in here and expose them to this. I'm not you. Fucking A, you're not. And if kids wander by, what are they going to do? Drop dead? This is part of the show. Well, shouting like that, it didn't do my cause much good more than the girl did. She goes off in tears, and the judge asks if anybody has any more witnesses. Gleckel, I'd like to sum up, Your Honor. The judge, I don't need it. It's not that complicated. You're telling me that if this guy is having intercourse with her in the middle of the street, that's also art? And I can't do anything about it because it has antecedents in Shakespeare and the Bible? Come on. Where do you draw the line between this and intercourse in the street, even if she consents? So I got convicted. On which grounds? Michelle asked. All of them? No. Disorderly conduct and obscenity. Obscene performance on the street. What is disorderly conduct anyway? I am disorderly conduct. The judge can sentence me anywhere up to a year for each offense, but he's not a bad guy. It's almost 4 o'clock now in the afternoon. He looks out into the courtroom and he's got 12 more cases out there, or 20, and he wants to go home and have a drink in the worst way. He looks like he's 400 miles southwest of the nearest drink. He does not look good. I didn't know what arthritis was then. Today, my heart goes out to him. He's got it all over and the pain is driving him nuts. But still, he says to me, are you going to do this again, Mr. Sabbath? It's how I make my living, Your Honor. He covers his face and he tries me a second time. Are you going to do this again? I want you to promise me that if I don't put you in jail, you won't do this, and you won't touch that, and you won't touch this. I can't, I say. St. John sneers. Mulcrone, if you're telling me that you committed a crime and you're going to do it again, I'm going to give you 30 days in jail. Here, Jerry Gleckel, my ACLU lawyer, whispers in my ear, say you won't do it. Fuck him. Just say it. Jerry leans over and says, fuck him. Let's get out of here. Your Honor, I won't do it. You won't do it. That's wonderful. 30 days suspended sentence. A fine of $100 payable now. I have no money, Your Honor. What do you mean you don't have any money? You have a lawyer. You pay for a lawyer. No, the ACLU gave me this lawyer. Your Honor, Jerry says, I'll put up the $100. I'll pay the $100 and we'll all go home. And then, on the way out, St. John's passes us by and says, so nobody but us can hear, and which of you gets to screw with the girl? I said to him, you mean which of us Jews? We all do. We all get to screw the girl. Even my old Zayda gets to screw her. My rabbi gets to screw her. Everybody gets to screw her except you, St. John's. You get to go home and screw your wife. That's what you're sentenced to, screwing for life Mary Elizabeth, who worships her older sister, the nun. So there was the flare-up, a fight mercifully cut short by Link and Norm and Gleckel. And this cost another $100, which Gleckel paid. Then Link and Norm paid Gleckel back. And in all, I got off lucky. It didn't have to be an Enlightenment philosopher like Mulcrone up there. I could have got Savonarola. I did, thought Sabbath. 33 years later, I got Savonarola dressed up to look like a Japanese woman. Helen Trumbull, Kathy Goolsby. The Savonarolas break them down. They don't want my foot on hers or on anyone else's. They want my foot like lynx in the casket, touching nothing and dead to the touch. Not for a second had Sabbath let her foot be, so close already to copulation. Not once throughout the entire performance did he lose her. Unlike Norman, she was too entertained by him to seize up even momentarily each time he called Helen Debbie, or when, for her benefit, he put in the bit about licking the girl's feet. She was right at his side, from the farce out on the street to the playground finale in Mulcrone's courtroom. Her large, plump laugh filled half with her earthly happiness and half with her wild distress. She was thinking, like Lear, let copulation thrive. She was thinking, thought Sabbath, that in cahoots with this loathsome freak, there might yet be a use to which she might put her old propensities and her pendulating breasts. Still a chance for the old juicy way of life to make one big last thumping stand against the inescapable rectitude, not to mention the boredom, of death. Link did look bored, good and green and bored. Don't admonish me, Drenka. You'd do it in a shot. This is the crime we were wedded to. I'll be as bored as you and Link soon enough. Everybody went to bed early. Sabbath knew enough not to get right into Debbie's things, and sure enough, only 10 minutes after the dinner dishes had been cleared away and they'd all said good night, Norman had knocked at the door to give him a bathrobe and to ask if he wanted to see the last Sunday Times before they threw it away. Had numerous sections of it clutched in his arms, and Sabbath decided to accept them, if for no other reason that so Norman could deceive himself, assuming he was so inclined, into thinking that the Hazarai and the Sunday papers were the soporific his guest was using to put himself to sleep. It was probably no less dependable than ever, but Sabbath had a better idea. I haven't seen the last Sunday Times for over 30 years, Sabbath said, but why not? Don't you get the New York papers up there? I don't get anything up there. If I read the New York papers, I'd be on Prozac too. Can you at least get a bagel on Sunday morning? Any morning. We were a bagel-free zone for a long time, one of the last. But now, except for a county in Alabama where the citizens voted no on a referendum, I believe the poor goy cannot elude the bagel anywhere in America. They're everywhere. They're like guns. And you don't read the papers, Mickey. This is unimaginable to me, Norm said. I gave up reading the papers when I found that every day there was another story about the miracle of Japan. I can't take the photographs of all those Japs wearing suits. What happened to their little uniforms? They must do a quick change for the photographer. And when I hear the word Japan, I reach for my thermonuclear device. Now that should send him packing. But no, he'd gone so far as to cause Norman to worry again. There they were in the doorway of Debbie's room still, and Sabbath could see that Norman, tired as he was about to come in now and have a talk, probably again about going to Graves. The guy's name was Graves. Sabbath had begged off after the funeral, said he'd think about seeing the doctor another day. I know what you're wondering, Sabbath quickly put in. You're wondering, where do I get my news from? From television? No, can't. They got Japs on TV, too. All over the screen, little Japs holding elections, little Japs buying and selling stock, little Japs even shaking hands with our president, with the President of the United States. In his grave, Franklin Roosevelt is spinning like an atomic dreidel. No, I prefer to live without the news. I got all the news I need about those bastards a long time ago. Their prosperity creates difficulties for my sense of fair play. The land of the rising Nikkei average. I'm proud to say I still have all my marbles as far as racial hatred is concerned. Despite all my many troubles, I continue to know what matters in life. Profound hatred. One of the few remaining things I take seriously. Once, at my wife's suggestion, I tried to go a whole week without it. Nearly did me in. Week of great spiritual tribulation that was for me. I'd say hating the Japanese plays a leading role in every aspect of my life. Here, of course, in New York, you New Yorkers love the Japanese because they brought you raw fish. The great bonanza of raw fish. They serve raw fish to people of our race, and as though we were prisoners on the Bataan death march who have no choice, who could starve to death otherwise, the people of our race eat it and pay for it. Leave tips. I don't get it. After the war was over, we shouldn't have allowed them ever to fish again. You lost the right to fish, you bastards, on December 7th, 1941. Catch one fish, one, and we will show you the rest of the arsenal. Who else would so relish eating raw fish? Between their cannibalism and their prosperity, they affront me, you know? His Highness. Do they still have His Highness? Do they still have their glory? Are they still glorious, the Japanese? I don't know. For some reason, all my racial hatred leaps to the fore just thinking about how glorious they are. Norman, I have so much to put up with in my life. Professional failure, physical deformity, personal disgrace. My wife is a recovering alcoholic who goes to AA to learn how to forget to speak English. Never blessed with children. Children never blessed with me. Many, many disappointments. Do I have to put up with the prosperity of the Japanese, too? That could really push me over the edge. Maybe that's what did it to Link. What the yen has done to the dollar. Who knows if that didn't do it to him? Me, it kills. Oh, it kills me so much I wouldn't mind, what's the expression they use now when they want to bomb the shit out of someone? Send them a message. I'd like to send them a message and rain just a little more terror down on their fucking heads. Still great believers, are they, in taking things by force? Still inspired, are they, by the territorial imperative? Mickey, whoa, slow down. Cool it, Mick, pleaded Norman. Do they still have that fucking flag? Mick, just answer that. I'm asking a guy who reads the New York Times a question. You read News of the Week in Review? You watch Peter Jennings? You're an up-to-the-minute guy. Do they still have that flag? Yes, they have that flag. Well, they shouldn't have a flag. They shouldn't be allowed to fish, and they shouldn't have a flag. They shouldn't be allowed to come over here and shake anybody's hand. Kid, you're off and running tonight. You haven't stopped, Norman said. I'm fine. I'm just telling you why I gave up on the news. The Japs. That's it in a nutshell. Thanks for the paper. Thanks for everything. The dinner, the handkerchiefs, the money. Thanks, buddy. I'm going to sleep. You should. I will. I'm beat. Good night, Mick. And slow down. Just slow down and get some sleep. Sleep.